Yep, I believe we can. I can hear you.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you all for joining us today. I am on my phone, so if it sounds a little different, that's why. I will continue to try to log in through my computer here in a little bit. If this is the first time you've joined an MODDD and U webinar, I will share that these 30-minute monthly webinars are geared toward providing information to individuals, self-advocates, and families. But of course, they're absolutely open to anyone who is interested, and we welcome all participation. If you're a self-advocate or a family member, welcome. Happy that you're here. If you're someone who supports and works with self-advocates and families, please be sure to share this information with them. Let them know that there are webinars out there that they can go back and listen to. As Kat shared, they are being recorded, and let them know they can sign up to attend these on a monthly basis. Today, we're going to talk about value-based payments. We're going to share a lot of information in a short amount of time. So like Kat said, if you have questions, please put those in the chat and we'll try to answer those as time allows. So to get us started, Emily and I are going to do some introductions. And Kat, I'm not able to switch my slides. Now I can. Great. All right. So my name is Lisa Nothouse, and just a little bit about me. I live in mid-Missouri with my family. My husband and I have two adult daughters, and our youngest daughter has a developmental disability and actually receives services through the division. I have been involved with and or worked in the DD field for a little over 30 years now in different capacities. And I currently work at the Division of DD as the Supporting Families statewide lead. And I'll let Emily introduce herself.
Sure, thanks, Lisa. Hi, I'm Emily Lubering, and I'm the director of the Federal Programs Unit, which is the oversight for our 4 DD waivers that we have. I am a registered nurse by my education, and I have over 14 years of experience with MoHealthNet in different realms of utilization, inpatient utilization, case management, disease management. I've been a nurse for over 20 years, but 14 of those years were spent with different types of MoHealthNet programs. And that's a little bit about myself.
Great. So the agenda for today is Emily's going to give us a really good overview of what value-based payments are. She's going to tell us about the service and program areas that are targeted for those incentives. And we'll talk about the impact that it will have on self-advocates, individuals, and families. So Emily, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I can advance slides or I can pass that off to you, whatever you would like to do.
You can pass that off to me, then I'll advance. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with giving a background of our timeline for value-based. Actually, I'm going to back up and share a little bit about what value-based payments are. Value-based payments are a payment approach or a type of payment that offers the states, such as Missouri or divisions like Developmental Disabilities Division, a way to transition from a system of reimbursement transition to a value-based or quality-based payment for our providers for the services. So from traditional, what they call fee-for-service or providing the service you get paid, it allows us to put in a transition to a layer or a layer of sorts for value and quality in those services that are provided. So I'll refer to value-based payment as VBP throughout this presentation, just for shortening it. And this first slide goes back and shares how far we have come as a division on value-based payments, the process to moving towards them, because it is a lengthy transition to using value-based payments. You can see in the left-hand side of the screen that in 2019, the division was awarded a grant with CMS that worked on towards value-based payments. And then as we move towards the middle of the year, or middle of the screen, the division continued to work on the milestones. And then Unable, I'm sorry, I just saw that. Unable to see the presentation? Mhm. Oh, somebody can see it.
Yes, I can see it too, Emily.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
May need to leave and come back if you're having trouble viewing the presentation, maybe rejoin. Um, so, and then in the middle of the year, middle of the screen, you'll see that we're at fiscal year 2022, quarter one. We were approved in our 1915 waiver renewal process, addition of some language that was moving us towards value-based payments. And then in the quarter three, the Q3 of 22, the General Assembly or legislation approved money towards value-based incentives. And here we are in quarter one of 2023, as we move to the right, working on those initiatives or those incentives to provide value-based payments for our providers for the services that they provide. And then eventually, as you move to the right, it's looking at the analysis of the data for those value-based payments. So moving forward, we're talking about the big picture for value-based payments. What does the division see for these value-based payments? It's kind of a three-pronged or a pie-shaped approach to how we look at it. You can see that with the value-based payments, that first pie on the left side slice of the pie is improving individual outcomes. So we want to have an impact on individual outcomes with these payments. We want to, as we move around the circle, we also want to reward those providers who facilitate quality outcomes with these payments. And then as we move to the bottom of the circle, we're also looking at being great stewards of public dollars with these value-based payments. Encourage our providers to provide that value in their services. And this next slide just kind of shares, as we look at those three core groups, what can be included in those three areas. If you're looking at the individual outcomes, improving the outcomes, we have on the left-hand side, there are several of our incentives that we'll talk about today that will fit into improving our individual outcomes. I apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so I have a little bit of a raspy voice. So in the left-hand side, you'll see that we are encouraging tiered supports and assessments. That are called the Hearst assessment or the HRST to identify risk in our individuals where we can put in place guards to avoid risk. We're also encouraging electronic health records, social and community inclusion, economic stability, and employment first and technology first, using those employee incentives and technology incentives for our employment services. In the middle section, rewarding and facilitating quality outcomes. We're skilled workforce. We're encouraging with our incentives, DSP training levels and a registered apprenticeship for the DSP, which is our direct support professional that you often are very much in contact as an individual or a family of an individual who's with the individual a lot of time. Also, what's called a staff stability survey, requesting information from our providers to share to share rates that they're paying their staff and turnover rates when staff leave a provider. And then in the last column, for great public stewards of the public dollars, transparency, efficiency. We are moving to Connection, which is a web-based case management system for our individuals, and then accountability, this alternative payment methods. So that's kind of pulling in a big picture of how we see these value-based payments working together for our individuals. Now I'm going to go into how the 9 value-based payment incentives and sharing how they can impact our individuals. You'll see as I go through these, or hear as I go through these, I talk a lot about the provider payment because it is a value-based payment for the provider. But the focus is on outcomes that will support our individuals and families, and so that's where the value base comes in, and that's how the piece of the pie that I shared about improving individual outcomes fits. The first one I'm going to talk about is our health risk screening tool incentive. And this, it's also shortened, it's called the HRST, is a web-based tool or assessment tool used to detect health risk in our individuals. The health information will support the team to identify strategies to decrease risk and improve health outcomes. So the incentive, or how we are going to incentivize our providers, is to complete this health risk with our individuals so that that tool can be used to identify those risks, and with the goal of creating a plan to minimize those risks and improve the health outcome of individuals. So this incentive is for residential service providers and case management providers serving individuals who are receiving waiver services. And the payment is a one-time payment of $72.20 for completion of each initial health or HRST screening tool. So you might see or have in the future, as we're bringing this incentive on, or just the assessment onboarding it, you may have an instance where they're completing the HRST or the health risk screening tool. The next incentive is the tiered supports incentive, and tiered supports has been in place with the division for several years, and it's a best practice model that supports and results in higher quality of life, fewer risk outcomes, and reduced staff turnover. So the incentive here is for our providers to develop and maintain a tiered supports. Reason being, as we have shown that providers that implement tiered supports and that support model for their staff, they do have reduced staff turnover, reduced burnout, and fewer risk. So this incentive is for the ISLs, or the individualized supported living service providers, to implement tier supports. There's actually two types of payments. They are going to be incentivized to provide the division with data about implementing the support services. And then also they will provide an assessment of if they're this last bullet point, quarterly incentive payment based on an assessment of low, medium, or high implementation. So the providers don't have to start off with every single aspect of tiered supports. They can start off at a low or medium and work up to high implementation of the requirements for tiered supports. And it's really a supportive behaviors that it encourage best practice. And we see this with the reduced staff turnover as helping the individuals decrease. It will help decrease the workforce shortage with DSPs and with individuals who have different people coming in because people are leaving and going to different jobs and such. The next incentive is called remote supports. And you may or may not be familiar with remote supports. Remote supports is right now it's part of assistive technology service. It allows for the individual to become more independent in their own environment, allows them to grow independence with remote support, still having someone who you can easily get in contact if you need assistance. It kind of takes the place of someone in your house or in your home environment that would be the actual person that's in home. We're not in this incentive is to encourage growing that with our individuals, those that make sense for them to include, that can grow with remote supports and that independence it allows for. This promotes reduction in stress of the workforce again, because you may then need less bodies or individuals to be with an individual and in place having remote supports. So this incentive is for individualized supported living and in-home respite. And it's a cost savings model where the provider will benefit from the cost savings as well as the state. The next incentive is what we call the DSP Training Levels, direct support professional training. And why we've included this incentive for our providers to encourage value is because time and time again, and studies have shown that training is vital for any employee in any position to be successful. It helps with retention when employees are trained effectively and feel like they have the training to do the job. So it's the same thing with our direct support professionals. And with ensuring that they have training, we want to see increased staff retention, so decreased turnover of staff, employees gaining on the national best practice skills. So not only are we intending to see staff retention with training levels, we're also expecting to see best practice out of the training that individuals will acquire with the training and improved individual outcomes. So this incentive is for any of our DSPs, and it lists out a whole bunch of services here. So you think of a personal assistant service, your personal assistant med, or they have a community networking, individual skill development, career planning, pre-voc, job development, community specialists, and a whole bunch more in here where you have those direct support trainings or just professionals. And I'm gonna move forward. Okay, so there is one more slide on this one. So what we're incentivizing our providers to do here that have direct support professionals employed at their agency is we're incentivizing them to have their direct support professionals complete 3 levels. And it's voluntary, so maybe they only want to complete level 1, or maybe they do want to do level 1 and 2 and 3. Based on their participation basis, that basis how much of an incentive they receive twice a year. With the outcome being, as I mentioned, we incentivize our providers for best practice, with the outcome then translating to our individuals with less turnover, best practices when those employees are with individuals. Another, the next incentive we have is kind of along the same lines as the training, except for this one's actually a registered apprenticeship. Our employment lead, Dwayne Shoemate, he did a whole lot of work and worked tirelessly to develop with the Department of Labor a apprenticeship for our DSPs, our direct support professionals. This is kind of, think of it, this is the best way he explained it to me in the world of apprenticeships. I think everybody's kind of familiar with apprenticeships for maybe electricians or plumbers. In my mind, I'm very familiar with that type of apprenticeship. You learn on the job, you learn best practice for being an electrician. This is similar in that it's very much the same. This is an apprenticeship where you learn and you receive the best practice training as you go along, and so that you can be a better direct support professional and learn as you're on the job. And this is a payment as the apprenticeship, the employee or the direct support goes through the apprenticeship. That is, as I mentioned, it is registered with the Department of Labor. They receive 1,560. The provider receives that as they get 50% complete, and then they'll get the rest. The provider receives the rest upon completion. So it's an incentive to spend that time on training on this apprenticeship for our DSPs that are coming into the workforce so they can be successful. And then the next one is an employment reporting. And I kind of mentioned this before with one of our incentives about providing us data. With this incentive, we are looking for providers, our employment providers, so our benefits planning, career planning, supported employment services, pre-voc, and I might be missing some, for our employment services, to provide the division with data. Right now, it's very difficult for the division to determine how many individuals do we really have out there working, what kind of jobs working in, that kind of side of data. And this is also Dwayne Shoemate's incentive and his wheelhouse. He could share a whole lot more about this. It allows us, it's going to allow us to be able to grow our employment options and our employment programs with more data to see where we're at currently and where we can benchmark to get better with employment, because we are an employment first state, which then leads to encouraging and helping our individuals get to hit their goals that they may have for employment. We also have the National Core Indicator Staff Stability Survey as one of our incentives. This incentive is to incentivize our providers to complete a survey, basically. Complete the survey about your staff, and they will receive an incentive of $2,000 per provider. So it's just one for the entire, they only submit one for the agency. And this will provide the division with information that we need to make decisions on rates. It'll help us with retention, turnover, and awareness of that information as well to help plan for the future for the division. And then the last one we have is the electronic visit verification, or EVV. And you may be familiar with this as well if you have a personal assistant. CMS, or Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, requires that personal assistant visits use EVV. What that means is that they basically electronically clock in and clock out when they're starting their service and ending their service, PA service. An incentive here is for our providers, our DD providers, to get on board with that and make sure that their data that is going over, that's required by CMS, or Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, to make sure that they are providing accurate data. So electronic visit verification is electronic timekeeping. So we're kind of moving maybe from a paper timekeeping system to an electronic one. It adds efficiency, it provides quicker payments, allows for better coordination and easier scheduling. So this is for agency personal assistant services. This is not an incentive that will be for self-directed PA. That's not eligible. And the payment is a 1% of your paid claims that the agency has paid in 6 months. So that was a whole lot of information. I know I kind of tried to make sure I shared enough about the VBP incentives, but also I know we have only 30 minutes to go over the topic. If you have more questions about value-based payments, on the screen here, we have the email address for the DD mailbox, and that email address is ddmail@dmh.mo.gov. And you can address any emails that you may want to send to that email box with VBP if you have questions about VBP. And that's all I have. Lisa, did we get any questions in the chat?
We have several questions in the chat. I don't know if we're going to have time to address them all. If you will go ahead and just advance the slide real quickly.
Sure.
Yeah. And the next one. Just going to let everybody know that we have another Mo DDD and U webinar scheduled for September 27th. The topic will be different. We try to choose a different topic every month. And as Kat said earlier, starting off, we do have questions in the chat. We will gather those up and we'll provide a Q&A document to go along with this PowerPoint when it gets recorded and posted on the division's webinar page. I don't know if we have
Yeah, I
time.
do see quite a few questions, and I love that.
Yeah. If there's any one of those that you want to answer real quick, feel free.
Well, I should have mentioned we do have a VBP website,
Yes, yes.
and of course I don't have that handy that email or that address. Let me see if I can grab that real quick.
I'm going to have to hop off soon. We've got a 12 o'clock that Lisa and I have to be in, I believe.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm really glad we got these questions, so we can address those afterwards, Lisa.
Yes, and yeah, the website is under the community supports and under the programs unit, you'll find the VBP information there. So we will gather these up and put them into a Q&A document and post along with the recording. Thank you everybody for joining. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.